Danny rises up from the floor. It isn't the real launch of Apollo 11. It is, of course, the symbolic launching of Apollo 11. In other words, it isn't real. What happens next is crucial to understanding everything else that happens in this film. Danny, bewildered, walks down the hallway. He sees that room 237, the room that Halloran warned him about, has a key in the lock and the door is wide open. It is important to note that the room in question was number 217 in the Stephen King version of The Shining. For reasons unknown, Kubrick changed it to 237. Those unknown reasons are about to become known. Danny is literally carrying a symbolic Apollo 11 on his body via the sweater to the moon as he walks over to room 237. Why do I think this? Because the average distance from the Earth to the moon is 237,000 miles. Now, some people may argue with this and say that it's actually 238,000 miles and change. The moon is in a slightly elliptical orbit, which means sometimes the moon is much further away from the Earth than at other times. If you do the math and you figure it out, you can see that the true distance that the moon is from the Earth is 237,000 miles. Even more important to this argument, at the time that Kubrick faked the Apollo moon landings, it was common knowledge in the textbooks and the scientific work that the moon was 237,000 miles away from the Earth. This is the figure that Stanley was working with, and that is why he changed the room from 217 to 237. The real truth is that this movie is really about the deal that Stanley Kubrick made with the manager of the Overlook Hotel, America. This deal was to get Stanley to recreate, in other words, to fake the Apollo moon landings. Danny represents the artistic side of Kubrick. Because of the complexity of the artistic realization of the manner in which the lunar landings needed to appear, Kubrick needed to trust his artistic side. Room 237 represents the fake lunar set that Stanley had to create to make the lunar landings appear factual. But really, on this set and in this room, nothing is real. As the film will soon reveal, room 237 has to be lied about. It cannot be understood at all, ever. Nothing real ever happens in room 237. When Danny opens up the door to room 237, we see the tag attached to the key. And if you just look at the capital letters on the tag, you can see that it says room, R-O-O-M, and then N, and there's a small O. If we discard the small O, we're left with R-O-O-M and N. You can actually get two words out of it. And those two words are moon room. So here we have the tag attached to the key. It's in the door in room 237, and the letters on the tag come out to say moon room. Is this what Stanley called the lunar set? In the next scene, Jack has a bad dream while he is working. He tells Wendy that in his dream he has killed Wendy and Danny.
I killed you and Danny. But I didn't just kill you. I cut you into little pieces. Oh, my God. I must be...
Meanwhile, Danny enters the scene, and it is obvious that some mysterious force has physically hurt Danny. This mysterious force has also torn his Apollo 11 sweater. Wendy, horrified, thinks that Jack did it. And in a way she is right, because Danny got hurt because of the deal that Jack cut. Frustrated, Jack goes to the bar located in the Gold Room. Obviously stressed, Jack whispers to no one that he would sell his soul for a drink. It is then that Jack meets the real manager of the Overlook Hotel. A mysterious man suddenly appears behind the bar. His name is Lloyd, and he is the bartender of the Overlook Hotel. Clearly, Stanley Kubrick shows Lloyd in a satanic light. Lloyd seduces Jack with a drink. Jack has sold his soul to the project, to being the caretaker of the Overlook. Jack and Lloyd's conversation is interrupted by Wendy's entrance. Lloyd and Jack's glass of scotch suddenly disappear. Wendy tells Jack that someone else is in the hotel. She tells him that Danny was hurt by someone who's inside room 237. Jack then goes to room 237, and he sees the manifestation of a young woman into an old woman. I believe this scene occurs because at first Kubrick thought that directing the Apollo 11 and later moon landings was going to be a sexy job. But once he started in on the project and had to deal with the minutiae of trying to fake the Apollo moon landings day after day, quickly the sexy woman turns into an old hag. So the Apollo moon landing started out as a sexy project for Stanley, but soon it turned into the equivalent of kissing an old lady. Because room 237 is symbolic of the lunar sets for Apollo 11, Jack has to lie to Wendy about what is going on in the room. He tells her that nothing is going on in room 237. It is apparent that Danny must have hurt himself.
What about those bruises on his neck? Somebody did that to him.
I think he did it to himself.
That's not possible.
Once you rule out his version of what happened, there is no other explanation. Is there?
Now that Jack has lied to his wife, he is able to see all of the spirits of the Overlook. Some of the best people stayed here. The secret group that rules the Overlook can finally be seen by Jack, Kubrick. He has been let into their posh society.
Hi, Lloyd. Been away, but now I'm back. Good evening, Mr. Torrance. It's good to see you. It's good to be back, Lloyd. What Lisa? Hair of the dog that bit me. Bourbon on the rocks. That'll do it. No charge, dear Mr. Torrance. No charge? Your money's no good here. Orders from the house.
Orders from the house.
Drink up, Mr. Torrance.
I'm the kind of man likes to know who's buying their drinks, Lloyd.
It's not a matter that concerns you, Mr. Torrance. At least not at this point.
Anything you say, Lloyd. Anything you say.
But at the party of rich people, Jack gets a drink spilled on him by the waiter, who turns out to be the previous caretaker who killed his twin daughters. In this we discover something profound. Although it looks like he, Jack, has been accepted into the secret high society, he is still just a servant. Jack will end up as a waiter or a janitor, just like Grady, the previous caretaker, has ended up as a waiter. But Mr. Grady, who denies that he was the previous caretaker, tells Jack that Danny is informing someone about the secret Apollo hoax.
I'm sorry to differ with you, sir. But you are the caretaker. You've always been the caretaker. I should know, sir. I've always been here. Did you know, Mr. Torrance, that your son is attempting to bring an outside party into this situation? Did you know that? No.
After this, Jack begins to go to hell physically. He starts growing an unkempt beard and stops combing his hair. two things that Stanley Kubrick was known for doing, or not doing, himself. Now Jack is looking a lot like Stanley Kubrick, especially as he began to appear under the stress of the twin productions going on at once. 1, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and 2, faking the Apollo 11 landings. It should also be noted that Jack and Stanley are about the same age and they have the same hair color. Early 2001: A Space Odyssey production photos show a youthful and unbearded Kubrick with combed hair, looking quite handsome. But photos taken 4 years later, near the end of the production of 2001: A Space Odyssey, show that Kubrick was a physical wreck. The de-evolution of Stanley Kubrick's appearance during the production of 2001: A Space Odyssey is disturbingly close to Jack Nicholson's appearance in The Shining. Despite his disheveled appearance, Jack has started writing again. Wendy, who is really supposed to be Kubrick's wife Christiana, wants to read the book that Jack is working so furiously on.
Jack angrily tears out the sheet of paper from his typewriter in order to prevent Wendy from seeing it.
She asks to see what he is writing. Jack is surprised by her entrance into the room where he does his writing. Angrily, he rejects her. He tells her to stay out of the room where he is writing.
Come on, honey. Don't be so grouchy.
I'm not being grouchy. I just want to finish my work.
Okay, I understand. I'll come back later on with a couple of sandwiches for you, and maybe you'll let me read something then.
Wendy, let me explain something to you. Whenever you come in here and interrupt me, you're breaking my concentration. You're distracting me. And it will then take me time to get back to where I was. Understand?
Yeah?
Fine. And we're going to make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. How do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
After he is done telling her to stay out of the room, he goes back to the typewriter. But now it has somehow put a new page into the typewriter. Jack is not surprised that the typewriter has a new page in it and goes back to writing. Is this a continuity error? Hardly. Kubrick is clearly showing us that whatever Jack is writing must be hidden from his wife. But more importantly, he is saying that the Overlook Hotel itself, that is America, which is feeding the paper into Jack's typewriter. Kubrick succinctly shows us that it is not Jack who is in charge of this thing. It is the Overlook.
It is clear that Wendy, Kubrick's wife, is not allowed to know anything about the project. But what is this book that Jack is writing? Wendy soon finds out what is in the book that Jack is working on. It is then that we get the clincher that proves that this point of view is the correct interpretation of Kubrick's The Shining. Wendy sneaks into Jack's writing room. Slowly she begins to read the book that Jack has been working on. Now this scene is totally original to the movie. It is not in the King novel. Although it is mildly terrifying, it's not that horrific. Yet it is the centerpiece of the film and arguably the scariest scene in the movie. Why? Because every single one of the hundreds of pages that Jack has been furiously writing is a variation of only one sentence. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Incredibly, every page has this exact sentence and is written over and over. Truly, it is scary enough to think that Jack has been sitting there, day after day, writing the same sentence over and over. Wendy's face reveals her fear over this discovery. What does it all mean? May I humbly suggest that the word all in this repeated sentence actually stands for A11, that is, Apollo 11. A11 work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. May I suggest that the nickname or code name for the faking of the Apollo moon missions was A11. Accepting that this is true, we can see what